Have you ever felt subtly trapped, even when life seems objectively good? Do you recognize patterns of self-sabotage that keep you from your goals? What if the bars of your cage are not forged by external forces, but meticulously crafted from your own thoughts and beliefs? Today, we're going to delve into the concept of a psychological prison, exploring how we unknowingly construct walls that limit our potential and stifle our true selves. This psychological prison isn't a physical place, of course. It's the accumulation of all the self-limiting beliefs, fears, and unconscious patterns that hold us back from living authentically. It's that invisible barrier that prevents us from pursuing our dreams, connecting deeply with others, and experiencing true joy. These are not random limitations, but actively constructed barriers. How many times have you told yourself, "I can't," without even trying? How often do you find yourself shrinking away from opportunity, because that voice in your head whispers that you aren't good enough? Carl Jung, the pioneering Swiss psychiatrist, dedicated his life to exploring the depths of the human psyche. His work offers a powerful framework for understanding how we build and maintain these psychological prisons. Jung identified key elements of the psyche: the ego, the shadow, the persona, which can become our jailers or even the very walls of our confinement. Are you being ruled by your ego's need for validation? Is your shadow, the repository of your disowned traits, sabotaging your relationships? The answers to these questions may be the keys to your liberation. From a young age, we are conditioned by our families, our cultures, and our experiences to believe certain things about ourselves and the world. These beliefs, often internalized without conscious awareness, become the building blocks of our prison. Societal expectations pressure us to conform, past traumas leave emotional scars, and internalized expectations dictate what we should be, rather than allowing us to embrace who we truly are. Think about it. How much of your current life is a reflection of your authentic desires, and how much is a script written by others? To put it another way, imagine that your mind is a house that you inherited. You didn't design it, but you have to live in it. Jungian psychology can teach you how to renovate it, tearing down the walls that confine you and creating spaces that allow you to thrive. In this video, we'll embark on a journey of self-discovery to help you identify the specific elements that make up your own psychological prison. We will explore the limiting beliefs, the hidden fears, and the unconscious patterns that are keeping you stuck. We'll delve into Jung's revolutionary ideas about the shadow self, those hidden aspects of our personality that we often disown or repress. Integrating the shadow, as we will see, is a critical step toward breaking free. By the end of this video, you'll gain a deeper understanding of yourself, develop greater emotional resilience, cultivate more fulfilling relationships, and discover a more authentic sense of purpose. But what if I told you that true freedom isn't about escaping the prison entirely, but about becoming a conscious prisoner aware of the walls, the bars, and the guards, but no longer controlled by them? Now, I know that confronting these aspects of ourselves can be challenging. It requires honesty, vulnerability, and a willingness to step outside of our comfort zones. You might be thinking, can I really change these deeply ingrained patterns? Or is this just another self-help cliché? I assure you that this isn't just another dose of empty platitudes. We'll be drawing upon the profound insights of Carl Jung and other leading thinkers to provide you with concrete tools and strategies for breaking free. So let's begin by exploring the very architecture of this psychological prison, starting with the walls that define its boundaries. So, we've established that these self-constructed walls are built from limiting beliefs, fears, and unconscious patterns. But where do these building blocks come from in the first place? Let's shift our focus now to the specific external forces that act as the initial constraints, the walls, of our psychological prison. It's vital to understand that these influences family expectations, cultural norms and societal pressures aren't inherently malicious, but they become restrictive when we internalize them without conscious evaluation. From the moment we're born, we're bombarded with messages about who we should be. Our families, with the best of intentions, often have preconceived notions about our career paths, our relationships, and our life goals. Culture dictates what's considered normal or acceptable, often imposing rigid standards of beauty, success, and behavior. Societal pressures push us to conform, to fit in, to avoid standing out. The human tendency to adopt these external values is deeply rooted in our need for acceptance and our fear of conflict. As children, we learn that compliance equals love and approval, while rebellion can lead to rejection and punishment. But at what cost? Are we sacrificing our authentic selves on the altar of conformity? Consider the aspiring artist who becomes an accountant to please their parents, or the individual who stays in an unfulfilling relationship because of societal expectations. Think about the pressure to achieve financial success, even if it means sacrificing your passions and values. We see these external forces manifest in countless ways in career choices, relationship patterns, and personal aspirations. Research on conformity and social influence consistently demonstrates the power of these external forces to shape our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Studies show that people are surprisingly willing to abandon their own judgments and conform to the opinions of the group, even when the group is clearly wrong. So, are you living your life or someone else's idea of it? The long-term consequences of living a life aligned with external expectations rather than internal values can be devastating. It can lead to feelings of resentment, anxiety, and a profound lack of purpose. Imagine waking up one day and realizing that you've spent years pursuing a path that was never truly yours. The sense of inauthenticity can be crushing, leaving you feeling lost and disconnected from yourself. This disconnect can manifest as chronic stress, depression, and even physical illness. You might start to resent the people you were trying to please, leading to strained relationships and further isolation. And here's where it gets really interesting. These external forces are only part of the problem. The individual plays a critical role in maintaining the prison. This leads us to our first major revelation. Having examined the walls, let's now turn to the internal guard, that part of our psyche that perpetuates the prison, that voice inside your head that constantly whispers doubts and limitations. It's vital to understand that these external limitations we've just discussed are internalized and reinforced by the individual, solidifying the prison. How does this happen? What invisible process turns external expectations into internal constraints? The key concept here is introjection, the unconscious adoption of others' beliefs and values. We unconsciously swallow whole the opinions and judgments of our parents, teachers, and society, without ever questioning their validity. This process creates internal conflict when these beliefs clash with our authentic self. Imagine a child who is constantly told that they are not good enough. They internalize this belief, and it becomes a part of their self-image. As they grow older, they may sabotage their own success because they unconsciously believe that they don't deserve it. This is the insidious power of introjection, and it operates largely beneath the surface of our awareness. Consider the limiting belief, "I'm not good enough." Where did that belief come from? Was it a parent who was overly critical? Was it a teacher who favored other students? Was it a society that constantly bombards you with images of unattainable perfection? These limiting beliefs manifest in self-sabotaging behaviors and negative self-talk. You might procrastinate on important tasks because you're afraid of failure. You might avoid pursuing your dreams because you don't think you're capable. You might constantly criticize yourself, reinforcing the belief that you're not good enough. And so, you build higher and higher the walls of your own psychological prison. These internalized beliefs create a self-fulfilling prophecy, reinforcing the prison walls and preventing individuals from pursuing their true potential. The more you believe that you're not good enough, the more likely you are to act in ways that confirm that belief. This is why it's so important to identify and challenge these limiting beliefs. What voices from your past are still dictating your present? What are you telling yourself that is keeping you trapped? Identifying these voices is the first step to silencing them, but we're just scratching the surface. There's a hidden, powerful force inside that acts as both prisoner and jailer. This brings us to a darker, more mysterious element within the psychological prison, the shadow self. Let's descend into the depths of our psychological prison and explore what Jung called the shadow self. What is this shadow, and why is it so often relegated to the dark corners of our psyche? The shadow represents the repressed and disowned aspects of our personality, those qualities that we perceive as negative or undesirable. These are the traits that we've been taught to suppress, to hide, to deny. In essence, the shadow is the prisoner within the prison, the part of ourselves that we've locked away because we're afraid of what it might do. Think about it. Anger, aggression, sexuality, selfishness, these are all examples of shadow qualities. We're often taught that these emotions are bad or wrong, so we try to suppress them. We project these qualities onto others, criticizing them for the very things that we deny in ourselves. We see anger in others and label them as aggressive. But here's the twist. The more we repress our shadow, the more powerful it becomes. Like a coiled spring, it builds up tension until it eventually explodes in unexpected ways. This repression can manifest as emotional outbursts, compulsive behaviors, and difficulty in relationships. Have you ever wondered why you sometimes react so strongly to seemingly minor things? It's often because you're not just reacting to the present situation, but to a whole lifetime of repressed emotions. When unacknowledged, the shadow can sabotage conscious intentions and create inner turmoil. You might find yourself acting in ways that are completely out of character, driven by unconscious impulses that you don't understand. But the common misconception is that the shadow is inherently evil. However, this is simply not true. Jung believed that the shadow could be a source of untapped potential and creativity. The shadow holds not only our fears and insecurities, but also our hidden talents and passions. What if your repressed anger could be channeled into assertive action? What if your repressed sexuality could be a source of creative energy? What if your repressed selfishness could be transformed into healthy self-care? The possibilities are endless, but there's more to this story than meets the eye. What if this prisoner is also one of the jailers? Now, let's take a closer look at the shadow's role as an unconscious jailer. How does projecting our shadow onto others reinforce our own imprisonment? The answer lies in the defense mechanism of projection, where we attribute our own unacceptable thoughts, feelings, or impulses to others. It's a way of disowning our shadow, of saying, "That's not me, that's them." In effect, by seeing unwanted traits out there, we don't have to recognize them within ourselves. Consider the person who is overly critical of someone else's laziness when they secretly envy their ability to relax, or the individual who aggressively points out someone else's flaws to distract from their own insecurities. These are examples of shadow projection in everyday life, and it's insidious. By constantly focusing on the perceived flaws of others, we avoid confronting our own shortcomings. Other defense mechanisms like rationalization, denial, and displacement further contribute to this process. We rationalize our bad behavior, deny our true feelings, and displace our anger onto innocent targets. In doing so, we create blind spots, preventing us from seeing ourselves clearly. These defense mechanisms create blind spots, preventing us from seeing ourselves clearly and perpetuating the cycle of imprisonment. We become trapped in a distorted reality, where we are always the victim and everyone else is to blame. This can lead to feelings of isolation and disconnection from others, because we're never truly seen or understood. So, how does this all connect to our discussion of the psychological prison? By projecting our shadow onto others, we reinforce our own imprisonment, preventing self-awareness and genuine connection. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It involves transforming the prison through acceptance and integration. But here's what most people miss. It's not about escaping the prison, but learning to live within it consciously. What would it mean to transcend the prison, not through escape, but through conscious awareness? This marks the beginning of the final stage of our journey. Is there a way out of this hall of mirrors? The first step, and perhaps the most challenging, is cultivating self-awareness and mindfulness. This involves observing our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors without judgment. It means noticing when we're projecting our shadow onto others, when we're rationalizing our bad behavior, and when we're clinging to limiting beliefs. It's about becoming a detached observer of our own inner world, noticing the patterns and triggers that keep us trapped. Think about it like watching a movie of your life. You're still experiencing the events, but you're not getting caught up in the drama. There are practical techniques for cultivating self-awareness, such as mindfulness meditation, journaling, and therapy. Mindfulness meditation involves focusing your attention on the present moment, observing your thoughts and feelings without getting carried away by them. Journaling can help you to identify recurring patterns in your thoughts and behaviors. Therapy can provide you with a safe space to explore your shadow and challenge your limiting beliefs. These practices weaken the power of the internal guard and allow for greater choice. As we become more aware of our thoughts and emotions, we gain the ability to choose how we respond to them. We can challenge the limiting beliefs that are holding us back, and we can start to integrate the disowned aspects of our personality. And with this conscious observation, self-awareness leads to greater emotional regulation, improved relationships, and a more authentic sense of self. We become less reactive, more compassionate, and more connected to our true selves. This process is ongoing. It's not a destination, but a journey. We're always learning, always growing, always evolving. What if I told you that the key to freedom lies in acceptance? What if the walls can never truly disappear? In our next section, we'll explore how to live within this psychological structure. So, if the key to freedom lies in acceptance, how do we begin to truly accept the parts of ourselves we've disowned? It starts with confronting and integrating the shadow self, not as an escape from the prison, but as a transformation within it. Let's delve deeper into shadow integration as a proactive approach, a way to reclaim lost power rather than simply being aware of its existence. Because what they often don't tell you is that your shadow isn't just a repository of darkness, it's a wellspring of untapped potential. Shadow integration involves consciously accepting and incorporating those disowned aspects of your personality, the traits you've been taught to suppress, deny, or project onto others. Now, it's crucial to clarify that this doesn't mean acting out negative impulses or indulging in harmful behaviors. Instead, it's about understanding the root of those impulses, acknowledging their presence within you, and channeling their energy constructively. Think of it as transmuting lead into gold. The aggression you've been taught to suppress can become assertive action, the selfishness can transform into healthy self-care, and the anger can be a catalyst for positive change. Jungian analysts have long written about the transformative potential of embracing one's shadow. Marie-Louise von France, for instance, emphasized that the shadow often contains the very qualities needed to achieve wholeness. Ignoring it, therefore, limits your power, your creativity, and your ability to connect authentically with others. Consider the individual who constantly criticizes others for being lazy, while secretly envying their ability to relax. By acknowledging their own repressed desire for leisure, they can begin to integrate that quality into their lives in a healthy way, perhaps by setting aside dedicated time for rest and recreation. Or, take the person who struggles with feelings of inadequacy. Instead of projecting this insecurity onto others through constant criticism, they can explore the root of their self-doubt and develop greater self-compassion. These shadow qualities, once transformed, become sources of strength. Ask yourself, what hidden strengths might you discover by embracing your shadow? How can you start transforming your dark side into a source of light? What if the very thing you despise about yourself holds the key to unlocking your true potential? But the shadow is only one piece of the puzzle. Another key element in understanding our psychological prison is the persona. Now, let's turn our attention to the persona, the false mask we wear, and how it contributes to our psychological imprisonment. Think about it. Is the face you show the world hiding your true self? This is the core issue we're tackling here, because even as we integrate our shadow, we must confront the ways we conceal our authenticity. The persona, in Jungian psychology, is the social mask we develop to conform to societal expectations and protect ourselves from judgment. In essence, it's the role we play on the stage of life, carefully curated to gain approval and avoid rejection. Now, it's important to emphasize that the persona is not inherently negative. It's a natural and necessary aspect of social interaction. We all wear masks to some extent, adapting our behavior to different situations and audiences. However, the persona becomes a prison when it becomes too rigid, too disconnected from our authentic self. When we identify too strongly with our persona, we lose touch with our true values, passions, and desires. The mask becomes a cage, trapping us in a role that no longer serves us. Consider the lawyer who feels compelled to maintain a polished, professional image at all times, even when they're exhausted and overwhelmed. Or the social media influencer who curates a perfect online persona, hiding their struggles and insecurities behind a facade of happiness. These individuals may achieve external success, but at the cost of their inner peace and authenticity. Studies on the impact of social media on self-esteem and identity consistently demonstrate the pressure to conform to idealized images, leading to feelings of inadequacy and a disconnect from one's true self. So, are you presenting a curated version of yourself to the world, one that hides your true feelings and desires? The question then becomes, how do you find balance between the expectations of your persona and being true to yourself? Can you loosen the mask, if not remove it entirely? But even as we chip away at the persona and integrate the shadow, we encounter another, perhaps more profound challenge: the lifelong journey of individuation. Let's now consider Jung's concept of individuation, the lifelong process of becoming a whole and integrated individual, the ultimate key to managing the prison. For while the shadow and the persona represent aspects within the prison, individuation is the process of navigating that prison consciously. What does it really mean to embark on this journey? Simply put, individuation involves integrating the conscious and unconscious aspects of the psyche, including the shadow and the persona, allowing us to move toward our true selves. It's not a destination, a fixed state of enlightenment or perfection, but a continuous journey of self-discovery and growth. The journey of individuation is about embracing your imperfections, challenging societal norms, and pursuing your unique path, even in the face of adversity. Consider the artist who defies conventional expectations and creates work that expresses their authentic vision, even if it's not commercially successful. Or think about the individual who leaves a high-paying job to pursue a passion that aligns with their values, even if it means a less comfortable lifestyle. These are examples of individuation in action. Against conventional thinking, they have chosen themselves. Connect this to the idea of finding meaning and purpose in life, even in the face of suffering and adversity. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and existential psychiatrist, emphasized the importance of finding meaning in suffering as a key to psychological resilience. His work suggests that even in the most challenging circumstances, we have the power to choose our attitude and find purpose in our lives. But individuation is about more than just pursuing your dreams. It's about becoming a fully realized human being. What if embracing this journey is the way toward a life of purpose? What does it mean to be truly, authentically you? And it's here that we arrive at our final revelation, that our psychological prison is not a fixed, immutable structure, but a space we can learn to navigate with awareness, acceptance, and freedom. Now let's turn to the final revelation, the transformation that occurs when we accept that complete escape is impossible, but conscious management and acceptance can, in fact, lead to freedom. What would it mean to become a conscious prisoner? It means recognizing the walls, bars, and guards of the prison, the limiting beliefs, the fears, the unconscious patterns, but no longer being controlled by them. It's about recognizing that, while we may not be able to tear down the walls, we can choose how to live within them. This is the power of choice. We can choose how to respond to our limitations, how to define our purpose, and how to connect with others, even within the confines of our own minds. Consider individuals who have faced significant limitations, such as physical disabilities, chronic illnesses, or past traumas, yet have found ways to live meaningful and fulfilling lives. Stephen Hawking, despite his debilitating illness, made groundbreaking contributions to physics and inspired millions with his intellect and spirit. Or consider individuals who have transformed their suffering into a source of strength and wisdom, becoming advocates for others who face similar challenges. These individuals are conscious prisoners, living with awareness, resilience, and a profound sense of purpose. Accepting our limitations, paradoxically, can lead to greater peace, contentment, and even freedom. This ties into the concept of self-compassion, treating ourselves with kindness and understanding, even when we make mistakes or fall short of our own expectations. But how can you live a meaningful life, even when trapped inside of your own mind? The answer, as we'll discover, lies in redefining the very nature of freedom. Now, let's consider ego inflation, another subtle yet powerful facet of the self-constructed psychological prison. Think of it as the deluded inmate who believes he's running the prison, completely unaware that he's just as confined as everyone else. Is it possible that, even as we seek freedom, our ego is secretly reinforcing the very walls that hold us captive? Ego inflation, in its essence, is an exaggerated sense of self-importance, superiority, and entitlement. It's not simply healthy self-esteem, which is grounded in reality and genuine accomplishment. Instead, it's a compensatory mechanism, a way of masking underlying feelings of inadequacy or insecurity. Those with inflated egos often crave external validation, constantly seeking praise and admiration to prop up their fragile sense of self-worth. What they don't realize is that this endless pursuit of validation only strengthens their dependence on external factors, further solidifying their psychological prison. Are we chasing authentic connection or fleeting admiration? Consider the individual who constantly boasts about their achievements, subtly, or not so subtly, putting others down to elevate themselves. Or think about the person who is pathologically incapable of admitting mistakes, always deflecting blame and maintaining an air of infallibility. Ego inflation manifests in countless ways, from the arrogant CEO who dismisses the ideas of their employees to the social media personality who curates a perfect online image, masking their true insecurities behind a carefully constructed facade. History is replete with examples, from the hubris of emperors who believed themselves to be gods to the downfall of corporate titans who became blinded by their own success. Is your ego building you up, or is it, in fact, trapping you? Ego inflation reinforces the psychological prison by creating a distorted sense of reality, preventing genuine self-awareness and fostering an inability to connect authentically with others. It damages relationships, hinders personal growth, and ultimately leads to feelings of isolation and emptiness. The inflated ego becomes a barrier to true intimacy, preventing us from seeing ourselves and others with clarity and compassion. So what happens when the foundation of the ego crumbles? This leads us to exploring the illusion of control, because ego inflation is often built on a false sense of power and independence. But here's the twist. The more tightly we cling to control, the more likely we are to lose it. What if the very foundation of our ego is built on shifting sands? Ego inflation often involves a denial of vulnerability, limitations, and interdependence. It's rooted in a deep-seated fear of uncertainty and a desire to exert absolute control over our lives and the world around us. But here's the critical point. This desire is fundamentally unrealistic. We are not, and can never be, completely in control. The human experience is inherently characterized by vulnerability, change, and the unpredictable forces of life. It's in accepting this reality that we find true strength. In fact, some spiritual traditions even speak of ego death, a complete surrender of the subjective self, as a pathway to enlightenment. Is that a paradox worth exploring? Think about the cautionary tales of leaders who, blinded by their inflated egos, made reckless decisions that led to disastrous consequences. The hubris of a military commander who underestimates their enemy. The reckless risk-taking of a Wall Street executive who believes they are immune to market forces. The inability of a company to adapt to changing market conditions, because its leadership is too arrogant to listen to feedback. These are all examples of ego inflation in action. Studies on the psychology of risk and decision-making consistently demonstrate that overconfidence and a belief in one's own infallibility can lead to poor judgment and catastrophic outcomes. Can you think of circumstances in your own life where your desire to control a situation blinded you to the reality of the situation? Recognizing the illusion of control can lead to greater humility, acceptance, and resilience. It allows us to relinquish the need to be right all the time, to admit our mistakes, and to seek support from others. This connects directly to the concept of interdependence, recognizing that we are all interconnected and rely on each other for support, guidance, and collaboration. But if control is an illusion, then what's the alternative? This brings us to the liberating notion of embracing insignificance as a pathway to deflating the ego and finding freedom within the psychological prison. Because while the ego screams for importance and recognition, true peace lies in accepting our smallness. Can you find freedom in letting go of the need to be important? Embracing insignificance involves recognizing our place in the vastness of the universe and acknowledging the limitations of our individual existence. It's about shifting our perspective from a self-centered focus to a broader awareness of the interconnectedness of all things. This doesn't mean devaluing ourselves or giving up on our goals. Rather, it means recognizing that our individual achievements are ultimately insignificant in the grand scheme of things. Paradoxically, this perspective can lead to a profound sense of liberation from the pressures of ego inflation and the need for external validation. What does it mean to loosen the grip of needing to matter so much? Consider the scientist who dedicates their life to unraveling the mysteries of the universe, knowing that their individual contribution is just a small piece of the puzzle. Or think about the artist who creates beautiful works of art, not for fame or recognition, but for the sheer joy of creation. Or perhaps consider the volunteer who quietly serves their community without seeking any reward or acknowledgement. These individuals have found peace and fulfillment by focusing on something larger than themselves, transcending the limitations of their individual egos. Can you think of examples where recognizing the smallness of your role actually brought you peace? Embracing insignificance can lead to greater self-acceptance, resilience, and a more authentic sense of purpose. It allows us to let go of the need to compare ourselves to others, to forgive ourselves for our imperfections, and to find joy in the present moment. It also fosters a deeper sense of connection with others, recognizing that we are all part of something larger than ourselves. This naturally leads us to consider how array orientation with insignificance ties to an active sense of gratitude. How can we cultivate an appreciation for what is, rather than what we lack? Let's now explore gratitude as a practical antidote to the entitlement that fuels ego inflation. What if shifting our focus from what we lack to what we already have could unlock a whole new level of freedom? Gratitude, simply put, is an appreciation for the good things in our lives. It's about consciously acknowledging and savoring the positive aspects of our experiences, relationships, and surroundings. Cultivating gratitude involves a deliberate shift in perspective, choosing to focus on what we have rather than what we lack. This, in turn, cultivates a sense of contentment and reduces the tendency to compare ourselves to others, a common trigger for ego inflation. Studies have consistently demonstrated the psychological benefits of gratitude, including increased happiness, resilience, improved relationships, and even better physical health. But is gratitude merely a fleeting emotion, or can it be a transformative practice? Consider the simple act of keeping a gratitude journal, writing down a few things each day that you are thankful for. Or think about expressing appreciation to others, verbally or in writing, for their kindness and support. Savoring positive experiences, taking the time to fully appreciate the beauty of nature, the joy of spending time with loved ones, or the satisfaction of accomplishing a goal, can also cultivate gratitude. It's the active noticing and appreciating of the good that surrounds us that truly shifts our perspective. What simple act of gratitude could you incorporate into your daily routine? Gratitude helps to deflate the ego by shifting our focus from self-centered concerns to the present moment and the positive aspects of our lives. It allows us to appreciate the simple things, to find joy in the everyday, and to recognize the abundance that already exists within us. This connects directly to the concept of mindfulness, paying attention to the present moment without judgment, and cultivating an appreciation for the here and now. But even as we cultivate gratitude, can we do more to reduce ego? What other practices can help us further chip away at the prison walls? But even as we cultivate gratitude, can we do more to reduce ego? What other practices can help us further chip away at the prison walls? This brings us to another layer within the psychological prison, the anima and animus, the imprisoned other, within. Have you ever wondered why you're drawn to certain types of people, or why you struggle to express certain emotions? It might be that you are seeing and relating to these projections from within the very prison you have built. Jung described the anima as the unconscious feminine side in men, and the animus as the unconscious masculine side in women. These aren't about gender stereotypes. They're about the full spectrum of human qualities existing within each of us. The anima influences a man's emotions, moods, and relationships, while the animus affects a woman's thinking, opinions, and assertiveness. In essence, they are the contrasexual aspects of our personalities, often repressed or unacknowledged due to societal expectations or personal experiences. What happens when these vital aspects are locked away? Consider the man who struggles to express his emotions, viewing vulnerability as a sign of weakness. He might be repressing his anima, leading to emotional shallowness and difficulty connecting with others on a deeper level. Or consider the woman who feels pressured to be agreeable and accommodating, suppressing her animus and struggling to assert her needs and desires. This repression can manifest in various ways, from projecting idealized images onto romantic partners, to experiencing unexplained mood swings or creative blocks. Jungian case studies reveal how individuals who integrate their anima animus often experience greater emotional balance, improved relationships, and a surge of creative energy. But how are these contrasexual aspects actually influencing us? The anima animus manifests in our relationships by leading us to project our inner images onto others. A man might idealize a woman, seeing her as the embodiment of his anima, only to be disappointed when she inevitably fails to live up to his unrealistic expectations. Similarly, a woman might project her animus onto a man, expecting him to be strong and decisive, and then feeling let down when he shows vulnerability or uncertainty. By not integrating these aspects of ourselves, we can unconsciously treat our partners as placeholders, meant to fulfill our own unrealized potential. Think about it. Are you projecting an image onto your partner, or are you seeing them for who they truly are? Acknowledging and integrating the anima animus is like unlocking another cell within the psychological prison. It involves becoming aware of our unconscious biases, challenging societal expectations, and embracing the full range of our human potential. Men can learn to embrace their sensitivity and emotional intelligence, while women can cultivate their assertiveness and logical thinking. This integration leads to more balanced relationships, greater self-acceptance, and increased access to creativity. But how do you identify this other side within yourself? Do you notice recurring patterns in your relationships? Are you limiting yourself by denying aspects of your anima animus? This leads us to another critical aspect of our psychological prison: complexes, the emotional hotspots that flare up and dictate our actions without conscious awareness. So, let's explore how these hotspots within our internal architecture are able to keep us locked into these patterns. Now, let's introduce the concept of complexes as emotionally charged, unconscious clusters of thoughts, feelings, and memories that act as hotspots within the psychological prison. Think of them as the prison's most heavily guarded cells, where our deepest fears, unresolved traumas, and suppressed desires are locked away. What happens when these complexes are triggered? Do we react rationally, or do we find ourselves overwhelmed by intense emotions and irrational behaviors? Complexes, according to Jung, develop from early childhood experiences and traumas. They are essentially psychic fragments that have been split off from consciousness due to their painful or disturbing nature. These fragments then become autonomous, exerting a powerful influence on our behavior, often without our conscious awareness. There are different types of complexes, such as the power complex, which drives individuals to seek control and dominance; the inferiority complex, which leads to feelings of inadequacy and self-doubt; and the mother complex, which shapes our relationships with authority figures and our ability to nurture ourselves and others. What seemingly small moment from the past might be the bars of your cell today? Consider the individual with a power complex who constantly seeks to dominate conversations and control situations. Or think about the person with an inferiority complex who always puts themselves down and sabotages their own success. These patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving are often triggered by specific situations or people, leading to emotional outbursts or defensive reactions. Jungian analyses of historical figures often reveal the driving force of specific complexes. For example, some historians argue that Napoleon's relentless pursuit of power was fueled by an unresolved inferiority complex stemming from his small stature and humble origins. Complexes can lead to irrational fears, compulsive behaviors, and difficulties in relationships. Someone with an abandonment complex might become clingy and possessive in their relationships, fearing that their partner will leave them. Or someone with a trauma complex might avoid certain situations or people that remind them of the traumatic event. Often, they operate as shadows, influencing our behavior in subtle, unconscious ways. Have you ever wondered why you overreact in certain situations? What are your emotional triggers? What recurring patterns do you notice in your relationships and behaviors? Identifying and understanding our complexes can help us to gain greater control over our lives and break free from destructive patterns. This involves exploring our early childhood experiences, identifying the root causes of our complexes, and bringing these unconscious fragments into conscious awareness. Through therapy, self-reflection, and dream analysis, we can begin to understand the origins of our complexes and find constructive ways to express the underlying needs and desires. But complexes are not necessarily negative. What if these hotspots contain the very energy we need to escape the prison? This brings us to the possibility of transforming complexes from sources of limitation into sources of strength and growth. Because while complexes often feel like prison cells, what if they could be stepping stones on the path to freedom? Can you reframe your challenges into opportunities for growth? Transforming complexes involves bringing them into conscious awareness, understanding their origins, and finding constructive ways to express the underlying needs and desires. It's about reframing our experiences and finding meaning in our pain. This often involves working through the complex in therapy or through self-reflection, gradually detaching from the emotional charge and integrating the fragmented parts of ourselves into a more cohesive whole. Remember that the initial desire of that complex was simply to alert you to danger. However, it may still be set to high alert after the danger is long gone. What if we could turn down the volume? For example, an inferiority complex can be transformed into a driver for achievement, as the individual strives to overcome their perceived limitations and prove their worth. A power complex can become a force for positive change, as the individual uses their influence to advocate for justice and equality. A trauma complex can become a source of empathy and resilience, as the individual draws upon their own experiences to support and inspire others. There are countless stories of individuals who have successfully transformed their complexes, and in doing so, they have achieved greater wholeness. What stories can you find within your own complexes? Transforming complexes can lead to greater self-acceptance, improved relationships, and a more authentic sense of purpose. It allows us to embrace our imperfections, forgive ourselves for our mistakes, and find strength in our vulnerabilities. This requires self-compassion and a willingness to challenge our limiting beliefs. But there's a key that underlies all of these complexes and how they affect your life. That key can be found in archetypes, and now we arrive at the blueprint of the prison, the archetypes that shape our experience. Are we free individuals, or are we characters in a story written long ago? Jungian archetypes are the universal, inherited patterns of behavior and imagery that shape our experience of the psychological prison. They are the underlying structures of the collective unconscious, the shared reservoir of human experience that transcends individual consciousness. They include the self, which represents the wholeness of the personality; the shadow, which embodies our repressed or disowned aspects; the anima animus, which represents the contrasexual side of our personality; the mother, which symbolizes nurturing and care; and the father, which represents authority and structure. But how do these archetypes influence the prison we've built? These archetypes are not fixed entities. Rather, they are dynamic potentials that manifest differently in each individual. They influence our relationships, our values, and our life choices. The hero archetype, for example, drives us to overcome obstacles and achieve our goals, while the trickster archetype challenges the status quo and encourages us to question authority. Understanding these archetypes can provide us with a deeper understanding of ourselves and our place in the world. These archetypes can be seen reflected in the common narratives that are often displayed in television, movies, and books. Consider the wise wizard, and the crone, or the mother and father figure. In this way, archetypes help us find meaning and context. What underlying patterns have been shown to you? Archetypes manifest in mythology, literature, art, and popular culture, revealing recurring themes in human history and the universal patterns of human experience. Think of the hero's journey, a common narrative structure found in stories across cultures, in which the hero embarks on a quest, faces challenges, and ultimately returns transformed. Or think about the mother figure, who appears in countless myths and legends as a source of comfort, guidance, and unconditional love. What recurring themes do you see in your own life story? Are you consciously choosing your role, or are you being driven by unconscious patterns? Understanding archetypes can provide us with a deeper understanding of ourselves and our place in the world, but the true power comes from consciously integrating them into our lives. This involves recognizing the archetypal patterns that are influencing our choices, challenging their limitations, and finding creative ways to express their positive qualities. By understanding these patterns, we can take a more conscious approach to creating the future we want. But understanding alone isn't enough. So, how do we integrate the knowledge of our shadows, complexes, and archetypes to find true understanding and self-acceptance? Because while these concepts offer a map of the prison, something more is needed to effect an escape. As we reach the end of our exploration into the depths of the psychological prison, let's pause and reflect on the winding path we've traveled. We've examined the walls, the jailers, and the keys to a more conscious existence. So, what does this intricate architecture of the psyche mean for you, and for your ongoing quest for greater personal freedom and self-understanding? In essence, we've seen how the very mechanisms designed to protect us, our beliefs, fears, and unconscious patterns, can inadvertently construct the walls of our own internal prisons. We've investigated Jung's profound insights into the shadow, persona, anima animus, complexes, and archetypes, and how these aspects of our inner world contribute to the bars of our self-made confinement. Now, the crucial point to remember is that self-awareness, shadow integration, and the journey of individuation are not just abstract concepts, but practical tools that can empower you to manage your prison and live a more authentic, fulfilling existence. Remember when we first asked whether you are truly free or merely a prisoner of your own mind. Consider how the external influences we discussed, family expectations, societal pressures, cultural norms, become internalized beliefs that then reinforce the prison walls. Recall our in-depth exploration of the shadow self, the unacknowledged prisoner within, and the critical importance of integrating it rather than projecting it onto others. And let's not forget our discussion about ego inflation, the ego's illusion of control and insignificance, reminding us how a distorted sense of self can further reinforce our imprisonment. It all connects back to finding the balance in anima and animus to accept the prisons we've made. The most profound insight to grasp is this: you may never fully escape your psychological prison, but you can become its conscious warden. You have the power to observe the architecture, understand the guards, and ultimately choose how to respond to the limitations you perceive. True freedom isn't about magically dissolving the walls. It's about recognizing that they are, in part, self-constructed, and that you possess the agency to transform your relationship to them. Embrace the discomfort of examining your beliefs, challenge the narratives that hold you back, and cultivate self-compassion for the imperfections that make you uniquely human. This exploration isn't confined to the realm of psychology. It speaks to the heart of what it means to be human, to grapple with our limitations, confront our fears, and strive for a more authentic existence. Understanding our own psychological prisons fosters empathy and compassion for others who are also navigating their internal landscapes. By acknowledging our shared struggles, we can work towards creating a more conscious and compassionate world, where we are all more aware of our own limitations and more accepting of the limitations of others. Consider the implications of a society built on this very conscious management of our individual and collective prisons. You are not defined by your limitations. You are defined by how you choose to respond to them. It takes courage to confront the shadows within, to challenge the beliefs that hold you back, and to embrace the journey of individuation. Be patient with yourself, acknowledge your progress, and celebrate every small victory along the way. Remember that it's okay to be imperfect, to make mistakes, and to stumble along the path. The key to a better future is letting go of the illusion of control and embracing your own insignificance within the grand tapestry of existence. Now, I challenge you to reflect on what you've learned today and ask yourself, how will you choose to live, knowing what you now know? Revisit your understanding of anima-animus balance, confront the shadow within, deflate the ego, and integrate your complexes. Embrace the unknown, for within it lies the potential for profound growth and transformation. The power is within you.